Okay, well, welcome everybody to the council workshop for Tuesday, February 16th at 5 o'clock. This meeting is being held virtually, and to that end, there's a resolution in the package to hold the meeting without the public in attendance. Will someone from council please move that recommendation? Moved by Councillor Hanson, second by Councillor Kern. Call the question on the motion. All those in favor? Contrary minded, motion carries. Council, we have an agenda that's been circulated. Are there any errors or omissions from the agenda as presented? Hearing none, will someone move adoption of the agenda?
So moved.
Moved by Councillor Back, second by Councillor Curran. Call the question. All those in favor? Contrary minded, motion carries and the agenda is adopted. Item 2.1 on the agenda is adoption of the council workshop minutes from January 25th. They've been circulated. Are there any errors or omissions in the minutes from that meeting as presented? Hearing none, will someone move adoption of the minutes? Moved by Councillor Back, second by Councillor Hanson. I call a question on the motion. All those in favor? Contrary minded, motion carries. And that moves us on to the purpose for tonight's meeting, which is the targeted OCP review action plan workshop. And what's going to happen here, Council, is we have Levin here as our consultant, is going to be leading the discussion tonight, looking for feedback from Council. This is just initial feedback from Council on the action plan. We do have future opportunities to give feedback to our staff on this as well, so don't feel pressured. But again, don't hold back your feedback. If you have questions or concerns or input that you'd like, now is a great opportunity, or at future meetings as well. So at this point, I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Milburn for comment.
Great, thank you, and good evening, Your Worship, members of Council. Staff are very pleased to be back before Council as part of the continuing targeted official community plan review. As you will hear from Ms. Atfa in a moment, tonight will be different from the previous two workshops, which were focused on the content of the white papers and supplements. Instead, tonight our team will be facilitating a council conversation, which will help guide the next steps in the process. So we're really excited to get started. Thank you, and I'd like to introduce Ms. Atfa, who will provide further introductions for our facilitator. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Through your worship, thank you, Mr. Milburn. Good evening, council members and all those who are able to participate in today's workshop. We are thrilled to be here for another workshop. This is a very important one this week and next as we start to advance the OCP review and really look for council, your input on looking at the actions that we've heard about to date and helping to refine those. And I appreciate the suggestion to this should be some fun. It's not the only chance. It's a chance to take where we've been and start to think about where we want to go. So Nicole Foth will be presenting as well, and I'll introduce Levin Callowert a little bit more as we turn over to him in a couple of slides with your permission. Thanks, Nicole. Next slide. Council has seen the next few slides a couple of times, and we like to just again remember we're looking at the 4 areas Council gave us direction to look at, areas in our OCP. It's not the breadth of our OCP, but it's those where we see some difficult issues that we want to try and address in the realm of transportation, climate emergency, housing, and the economy and employment lands. So we have spent a number of months looking at understanding these issues. Our goal again is to come to an action plan that can help support the vision that we all wholeheartedly support to the year 2030. Next slide, please. If it seems like we've been at the We Are Here bar for a while, we have. This is our 3rd week at least this month, and another, at least one more workshop to come. It has taken a lot of effort to reflect back to the work that has been done to date, and so many pieces that we have done, and we're kind of at this point of wanting to move into action planning, and this is what we will be doing over the next couple sessions. Next slide, Nicole. We did a lot of information sharing and learned a lot through our refreshers on transportation a couple weeks ago and on economy. Looked at climate emergency in a little bit more depth with the white paper from last year. And also I know that we learned a lot and reflected on some best practices and how COVID has impacted these areas. Last week, we had a chance to focus on housing and to also look more closely at what social equity might mean for this project and for the municipality. So we are here today, February 16th and February 23rd, and I hope that this will be not stressful, but an opportunity to reflect back and think forward. Next slide. What do we want to do? We want to get your help, please, to look at reviewing some actions, refining them and prioritizing. Not all of them tonight. We will have a feedback we want to build on over the next little while. So that's our main purpose, and that's been the purpose for this project from the outset. So how do we want to do this? The next bullet points. We want to build a shared understanding. And this is where Lieven's input is really going to help, and his ability to facilitate, build a shared understanding of where we want to get to in this action plan. Yeah, looking at actions, that's what our jobs are all about, and establishing priorities. So I'll just take a minute to introduce Lieven Callawert to you. He is our facilitator for the next couple of workshops, and we had started working with him as we were in the workshop mode last spring. So we're really happy that he's still able to work with us and with you. Lieven works in the fields of leadership and collaborative capacity. What his goal is accelerating implementation of good practices and initiatives. He's been described as an excellent connector and a deep listener. So with your worship's permission, I'd like to turn it over to Lieven Callawert to guide the rest of the workshop until staff come back in, and Nicole will come in to talk about some of the actions a little bit later on. Thank you.
Welcome.
Thank you, Mayor Little, and thank you, Isatva, for this great introduction and bringing all the puzzle pieces together. I feel honored to be here tonight. Also, and it's stepping off and jumping off the train of at least 2 consecutive workshops, supporting you to the full extent possible. And it's really, we've been preparing this thoroughly with staff. It's an accomplishment to be here. It's also a big shift. So what I would like to do together with you on behalf of staff and the whole team is, there's been so much things that happened in the past to bring us to these points. And so we're going to have 3 steps tonight, but also next week, to bring you into the driver's seat as council. So the most important thing is how to give the wheel in your hands, put you in the driver's seat also in the decision-making process now towards the action plan, and empty all the buckets of information. So there's 3 steps you want to go through tonight. And Nicole, if you could bring the other slide, please. So we would first like to start with appreciating the past and all the work that has been conducted. There's been a lot of effort put into this, already from a long time ago. OCP goes back from 2012. We've had a great global challenge with the pandemic, and although we wanted to start and you wanted to start in March, we had to postpone because of all kinds of other necessities. But the resilience that it brings with us and with brought for you is also bringing more materials to the table to even do more appeal on your leadership. So we want to bring an overview. We want to go through 3 activities tonight. And then Nicole is going to bring us into the next steps to the workshop for next week and some homework to conduct, and that goes with that also. Next slide, please, Nicole. So the key issue here is all about, and that's also what Tina said, we want to help you bringing puzzle pieces together. And there's 3 puzzle pieces. There's key issues, there's a vision being crafted by you, and then there's an ambition. And action is bringing these 3 elements together. And so there's been so much beauty brought to the table. There's also key issues to address. And so one of the most important key issues that has been formulated in the past is that residents and businesses are frustrated with the inability to get around reliably, comfortably, and safely. It will be boring to repeat this over and over again, and you will hear this every week, but we want to repeat this. What needs to to be solved through the eyes of the citizens of your municipality. That's number one. The second one that's coming across constantly is housing and transportation. They are top concerns for local businesses. The third one, residents, yes, a green bucket, are concerned about climate emergency. And the last one is residents and businesses are concerned about the lack of affordable housing and housing diversity. With these key issues, there's been a whole team of beautiful brains having come together for months and months and months, and also building on years of expertise. How could we solve this for the district of North Vancouver? And how to solve this is all depending on what do you want to accomplish. And I always have a tremendous respect, much more for you than me enabling your power and your leadership. You are the ones crafting a vision for this municipality. You got the mandate of citizens to create a vision, but you also have the responsibility to execute that. And that's also why we bring these workshops together, and we want to make these turning points. And in order to do that, I would like you to listen very carefully to your own words you've been putting together now about 2-3 years ago on this OCP vision. And this is a bucket full of words, but it's an incredibly strong vision, and I'm really touched by that. And I want to repeat it, and I would like to invite you to hear, if you listen to this as a citizen, but also as a leader, how does that resonate? Does it make you happy? Does it make you bored? Does it make you scared? But this is what came forward from your words 3 years ago. And I'm going to read it out loud. Our vibrant neighborhoods and centers are framed by our mountain backdrop, forests, streams, and shorelines. And I'm jealous looking at them from here on Bowen. We live in an inclusive and supportive community that celebrates its rich heritage and lives in harmony with nature. Our neighborhoods in the district include people of all ages, cultures, and incomes. All are equally welcomed, valued, and actively engaged in community life. Our young have safe and healthy environments in which to grow and succeed. Our seniors can remain in the community with their needs met in a dignified way. Our network of well-designed, livable centers provides a wide range of housing options and opportunities to shop, work, and gather. Our local businesses are resilient and diverse, providing the services we need and an array of employment opportunities. Education, art, culture, and recreation enrich our daily lives. And we are an active, healthy, and creative community. How important can this be in these times that we live in right now? And you wrote this down 3 years ago. Our enviable pedestrian cycling network connects us to our destinations and our unparalleled natural environment. Many people walk, cycle, and take transit, leaving their cars at home as viable alternatives are available. And last but not least, our community is effectively addressing and adapting to the challenges of climate change. Our air is clean, our water is pure, our waste is minimal, our lifestyle is sustainable. We have ensured the district remains a great place to live, learn, work, and play for generations to come. This is a mouthful of words, but this is given the key issues I just addressed. This is the OCP vision. This is the dream you hold. This is the vision you want to realize together. The art of leadership and of being a council is not as in every political context, and that's why politics is difficult, and you need to be a special animal to come into politics. It's also a conflicting space. You're there to shape and sharpen the conflicting opinions of many, many citizens in order to come to a common ground. And you already succeeded in quite a lot of things. This vision came up 3 years ago, but many things have been realized. Next slide, Nicole. Examples, and these are just some examples. And I would really like to start in the upper right corner, because I've been enjoying this initiative on your behalf a lot, also being in your district. The temporary outdoor business areas to support COVID-19 recovery had a strange way of being able to still connect in times where fear kicked in. And see still sparks in eyes from people. And that's an achievement and a resilience you demonstrated as council. When I go back to the left upper corner, the new R2 Marine Drive rapid bus routes has been a very important implementation. Approved rezoning, for example, on the Delbrook lands has been a very important one and very highly respected also by the community. And the approved community energy and emissions plan is also a very important achievement that's on your plate. That's, you can write it to your credit. All of these things set, and all of these things having brought into an overview to come to a first activity. And as I said, I'm here also to help you. And this is the longest period of time that I've been talking this evening, to support you having a profound dialogue. And a dialogue is really about deep listening. And you received the question of this first activity also, I think yesterday or the day before, through your mail, in order to reflect on it. But it's an important question we wanted to raise. And this first activity, which will last for about 45 minutes, is meant to discover and to really discover the collective ambition that is present around your table. None of us know these right now. This has changed dramatically, to my opinion, also in this last half a year. But what I would like to invite you into is to listen carefully to each of your colleagues in the upcoming 30 minutes to 3/4 of an hour, to really understand what their dream achievement is, what they see as an ambition. And Nicole, if you could bring up the question. The question that we brought to your table is the next one. Shaping the future, your dream achievements, and really take this incredibly personal. Your dream achievements. And from a very practical point of view, the first thing that I would like to invite you to is, could you take pen and paper in front of you so that you can start taking some notes? That's the first thing that we would like to ask. And start writing down in the right upper corner of your paper, and it's going to remain private. One figure. I would like to write down the figure of your age in 2030. What's your age in 2030? And write it down at the right upper corner of your page. If you have a habit of saying, well, I'm going to turn a year younger every year, then we have an issue. But if you just follow the normal order, you're going to age 9 years from now. But take that age in mind. And I want to take you also with me, and I'm quite confident and hopeful that I'm still living here so close to you guys. But imagine you are at the celebration party, that you're invited with your kids, maybe with your grandchildren, I don't know your situation, but with close family members. And some people come to you and they just come to, and in these times, within 9 years, I'm hopeful we can give a small hug again towards one another. But they come to you and say, my goodness, dear councillor or dear mayor, I really want to thank you for what you did in 2021, because it has changed our lives so much because of this and this and this. What would you like to hear in 9 years' time from these people? What would really touch yourself? And that's going to happen through the leadership actions you take now. And we can take very strongly informed decisions because there's a lot of material to the table. But this material won't mean anything if we don't put it into practice. And so the question raised to you, by 2030, what will council, you're part of a group, what will council have achieved that you will be most proud of? What will council have achieved that you will be most proud of? And if you have to steer it into that longing for that beautiful person hugging you in 2030 on that celebration, what do you want them to say to you? And the exercise we're going to do is that you all got a window of 5 minutes in the upcoming time. 5 minutes of speaking time. That's the easy part of this first exercise. The difficult part of this exercise is that the other 5 to 6, all of you are in listening mode. You have to discover where the common ground of this ambition lies between all of you. As a group, as a team, it's very easy to listen where you disagree. you can only move the needle on the things that you agree upon and can move the needle forward. And that's the leadership that is needed right now. And we will take notes too. Nicole's going to do that on behalf of the group. But I really invite all of you to take notes while listening to your colleague. So that's one practical request. Take notes to hear where do we really agree, or where do we have common ground. And common ground does not mean that you cannot disagree. It can be that you disagree but feel, oh wow, this might be important. I want to move the needle over there. Write that down. That's what you're going to do now. And a last thing that I would like to ask is, let's put the screen, and in Zoom you can do that at the right upper corner, the view. You can there move the screen towards speaker view. I would like to invite all of you to put speaker view on the councillor or Mr. Mayor when you guys speak, so that we can see each other and also hear the message profoundly. So one last rehearsal of the exercise. Most difficult part, open these ears, listen carefully to the colleagues. Where do we have common ground on the ambition? That's the exercise. Easy parts, maybe. We give each of you 5 minutes at the max. If you could do it in 2 minutes, perfect too, but when you go over these 5 minutes, I'm gonna give a sign to present to you the answer to the question we just raised. By 2030, what will Council have achieved that you will be most proud of? And Mr. Mayor, I would be honored if you could take it over from me also to just give the order. You can also guard the time, or you can also delegate it to me if this supports you. But I also want to give you the space to listen very carefully to your colleagues and to this group also voicing their own opinions. But if you could rank the order.
More than happy to have you govern that time, Lieven. Go right ahead.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Mayor. So if you then pick the order of the colleagues, I think that's something you can do much better than I do. Then I would be happy to also manage time. So feel free to give the space to your colleagues. And enjoy this first exercise and round of dialogue.
Well, okay. You want me to call on someone right now? I'm trying to give someone a little bit of time to get ready, but
you should go first, Mike.
Well, I don't mind going first if that buys everybody some time for comments. You know, I have the luxury of having been around for the first OCP review, starting in. I first came on council in 2005, so 2008 is when we started the research for the OCP. And had some similar thought exercises about what you would like to see different about the community and what you like to retain about the community. I would say that when we get to the end of the time of the OCP, the things we're going to be most proud of are recognizing that we were able to move towards a greater variety of the type of housing in our community, so people can move up and down and through the spectrum of housing in our community and have options. That was always one of the challenges, is that you had a lot of people that when they got to retirement and tried to look for ways to downsize, they didn't have that option and ended up having to move away from their support networks. And so having a greater variety of housing throughout our community. Also having solutions to the challenging transportation problems that face our community, both in terms of having viable alternatives for people to get out of their car. I do see us coming to the end of the auto age. And it's important for us to lead as a municipal government in helping give our citizens an opportunity to make the transition to a future that is less car dependent. Not just less car dependent, I think I can use even stronger language that allows people to live entirely without a car in our community in future. And I think those are going to be the things that we're going to point back to this time period on as being dramatic changes in the history of the district of North Vancouver. Up until this point, we've been a car-centric community. Up until this point, we've largely been single-family ownership focused in our community. And it's this generation, it's this OCP that is making those dramatic changes. There's other things I could say, but I kind of want to have other members of council fill in the other big ones. I mean, we obviously have the 4 white papers for a reason. So I've kind of touched on 2. I think I'd prefer to leave it to others to carry on. So that's all I'm going to comment on. I'm going to look. I see Councillor Bond looks like he's ready to go, so I'm going to call it, and he volunteered me first. So Councillor Bond, you're up next.
I should have expected that, but so Levin, when you say 2030, I wrote down my number. I'll share it. I'll be 47 years old at that time, and I think all of us here on the table, myself, we all care about our community, and we all have a deep appreciation of what our community is and what it can be in the future. And when I think out to 2030, and I imagine an individual, thinking back about this time, something that would mean a lot to me if we took actions and achieved something would be someone saying, I feel welcome in North Van. I feel like this is my home. And, it would mean a lot if that person wasn't born here and didn't grow up here, that we were a welcoming community and we provided opportunities, not just for people to live, but we provided a place of opportunity, that North Vancouver was a place of opportunity. Like I think it has been in past generations in different periods in time. And I think a lot of the work that we've done through the OCP has shown us that it still is a place of opportunity, but it's not a place of opportunity for everyone. And it's more and more difficult for people to come here, people to stay here. And so if a future resident or a current resident said, you know what, the work that this council has done over this time period through this OCP, let me live here, let me have a life here, let me grow my family here, whatever that family may look like, set down roots and build a community. That would make me feel really good on the work that I did on council. And like Mayor Little, I got involved, like the points that Mayor Little made, I got involved mostly because of in local government, mostly because of ideas around housing, ideas around transportation, ideas around representation in local government, and having the voices of those future residents being represented in the plan. So I won't say anything more specific than that, because I think that's what we'll get into the actions when we talk about specific things. But North Vancouver being a welcoming place, being a place of opportunity for current residents, for future residents, and for people of all different walks of life. That would be, if we took action now, that would make me feel good about the work that we did.
Thank you so much, Councillor Bond. Yeah.
Councillor Curran.
Thanks. How long do we have?
Well, I can be it's beautiful because both Mayor Little and Councillor Bond only took half of their time.
Oh, they gave it to me. That was so nice. Mine's okay. Just about 20 minutes. So no, for me, it's really about system change. Like, that's why I got into this. So what does that mean to me? It means dismantling oppression that lives within ourselves and within individuals and within systems that leaves people behind. It means understanding our relationship with a finite biosphere, which is the planet. And it means like a completely different way of life that's actually really connected to people and to each other. Like, I would take our district of North Vancouver, inspired by nature and enriched by people, to be connected to one another and connected to the planet. Because I think that we have become very disconnected from each other and very disconnected from the fact that human health is actually requires a healthy planet. So that, I think, involves connecting, learning from Indigenous leaders and people who have lived here for thousands and thousands of years before colonization, figuring out how we can work together to build this just, equitable, regenerative, decarbonized future. And I work on One Planet, 10 years, no one left behind. So that's really recognizing that there's one planet, but it's inequitably shared. So really understanding the connection that people have to consumption and from extraction, and the harm that that causes to people who are poor, Black, Indigenous, and other countries. And we have a responsibility to care about that and to take action on that to be more equitable. I think if you look at the Brundtland Commission back in the day when they talked about sustainability. It was really thinking about future generations. And we're in a climate and ecological emergency. It's not just about future generations for privileged white folks in the global north. It's about the death and suffering that's happening right now. So I think people to understand that would be really profound and transformative. And I think that we have everything we need to surprise everyone, including ourselves. So I think in 2030, we're all going to be really tired. But we have rested throughout this 9 years because we recognize that happiness, rest are really important. But we've worked really hard and we've taken all of the technology and solutions that we know exist and we've implemented them quickly at a scale and scope that aligns with the emergencies that we face. And it's a better place. People are happier. It's quieter. There's way more nature, which is what this place was before a really bad history that we need to reconcile and learn from and not repeat. So there's like high fives and we did it. I don't know if that was the question. I forgot what the question was.
Well, I repeat the question for all of us. We are in the midst also. By 2030, what will Council have achieved that you will be most proud of? You brought a lot of fire into the conversation. So I repeat the question: is this for you the answer you gave to the question, or do you still want to add something, Councillor Gordon?
No, I mean, you know what I noticed on Zoom when you're watching back? Everyone always says, "No, I don't have to add anything," and then they talk for 5 more minutes. No, I have no more comments. I think that we can do the unimaginable, and we have everything that we need to do. And sometimes leadership is about leaping without knowing all the answers. But I think we know what inaction or status quo will do. So I think if we don't dismantle the status quo, then we'll never do what we need to do in this short window of time that we have from a very scientific-based reality. We have to move quickly. So again, I didn't answer your question. I'm not good at this exercise, but we'll go to the next person.
Thank you.
I'm going to go to Councillors Hansen, Forbes, and then we'll have Councillor Back bring it home. Councillor Hansen.
Thank you very much, Lieven and Mayor Little. The answer at the top right of the page is 68. Although if you asked me in 5 days, it would be a larger number. And I think that is an excellent way to frame the discussion because it puts into context so much from my point of view. And I thank you, Lieven, for the question, because again, I think the question puts into context so much. And I did, as I reflected on the question, and I did reflect very seriously and very earnestly, I did try to envision the very circumstance that you're putting forward for us to contemplate. I was elected in 2014, and that time on council between 2014 and 2018 probably to some degree defines my perceptions of what we need to achieve and what is attainable for us. I mean, I do believe that in 2030, when the encounter occurs in the aforementioned cocktail party, there will have been some significant progress on active transportation and cycling routes. There will be investments in transit, which are important, and there'll be improvements in our road networks. And I think all that is achievable and will be meaningful. There will be climate actions, and Councillor Curran will ensure that. We will be proud of the preservation of green space. I can say, Lieven, that before my re-election in 2018, because my mother had died during my first term in council, I asked myself the question, what would she be proud of? And far and away, she would be most proud of me because of a couple of very small forests, which through diligence on my part, I think I contributed to saving and sparing from development during my term in council. So I think I will have that pride of further preservations of green space, investments in park and public space. I think we can have the pride of financial responsibility, limited tax increases. There's an affordability crisis through our culture at the moment. And I think we'll have the pride of knowing that we were careful with the taxpayers' money. I think there'll be some progress on reconciliation and Indigenous issues. I think there are steps that we are taking and can achieve in that regard. And I think there will be pride in some progress around issues of inclusion. And I'd like to see more diversity among members of this council. I've pointed out before that I'm not aware of any non-Caucasian councillor in the history or mayor in the history of the district. And I think by 2030 that will change, and we can all take some pride in what led to that change. However, the topic area that we will have the greatest pride in is the area over which we have the greatest control, which is land use. That is the area through zoning that we have the greatest control. And I will be proud to the degree that I have contributed to land uses that support social, affordable, and supportive housing over further market housing. And I say that I'm defining that pride in relation to the council, the commencement of my council activities in 2014, and the onslaught of market housing, which in my view came in that first council and which failed to address the housing needs of our community and failed to address the diversity needs. I mean, frankly, going back to a number of the comments of other councillors, failed to make, in my view, our community a welcoming place, and failed to make it a sustainable place for our families, because there simply isn't an appropriate range of housing for all members of our families, younger people and older people. And also we can create zoning which creates and preserves employment lands, and in so doing creates a more balanced community and more opportunities for people to live and work near to home. So I will be most proud because we will have taken steps around land use that ensure greater balance in our community, greater diversity of opportunity in both housing and in employment. Thank you very much. And thank you, Lieven, for the question. I reflected on it very deeply, and I thought it was an excellent point for communication.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hanson.
And happy birthday later in the week. Councillor Forbes. Oh.
Oops.
I saw Councillor Forbes on the list a minute ago. May have lost her for the time being. Councillor Back.
Sure. Thanks, Mayor Little. Thank you, Lieven. Thank you very much for leading this and taking us through this activity. I too took some time with this question over the weekend, and it's a big question, but it's one that we should all be thinking about, all the time. And much has been said already that I agree with, so I'll try not to repeat that. In 2030, I'll, like Councillor Bond, will be about the same age. I'll be 47 years old. I will have young children. And I think for me, it's about creating that future for them, for children as well as for my parents. And sort of looking at our community through, we talk about the social equity lens, but really looking at everything through that lens. In terms of housing, like the mayor, I think we need to create a greater diversity of housing, but I'm very much interested in changing the conversation around housing. There's been such a divide in our community when it comes to development and what that actually means. Like has been said as well, like I definitely want to create a more welcoming environment for people that are wanting to live in our community. I think we pride ourselves and like to think of ourselves as a very inclusive community, but I think there are examples of areas where we may not be as welcoming or as inclusive as we could be. But again, just on the housing front, we've designed our OCP around protecting the single family home, but we know that that's the most expensive form of housing that really is not going to serve us well as a community in the future. And I think we need to recognize that form of housing makes up the majority of our community, and we have to include that obviously in plans going forward. But I think we have to recognize the importance of creating more diversity within all of our housing. I wanted to touch on the business front as well. I'd like us by 2030 to kind of be known as a community that is welcoming of small businesses, supportive of small businesses, welcoming of new ideas and new investment, and recognizing that small businesses are in many ways the backbone of our community, and that we support them, want to help them start, help them grow, and that as a municipality, we're not going to get in the way. We actually want to foster small business and economic development here in our community. The climate targets have been touched on, but certainly I want to be known by 2030 as having made a real shift when it comes to our climate action and being known as a greener community than we are. Our SEEP, I totally think is the right plan, and hitting those carbon emission and energy consumption reduction targets is going to be really critical, and I think that's something that we just have to stay committed to so that we can have that moment of pride when we are hitting those targets. And then on transportation, I would say, recognizing that active transportation is something that should not just be an option or something that we want to invest in, but that it's just critical, and that we are, we're not designing our transportation system around the most expensive, form of transportation, being the privately owned vehicle, recognizing that people are going to continue to drive, and there's nothing wrong with that, but that, the shift really has to take place there. And so in 2030, I'd like to, feel proud of the fact that we made some real shifts when it comes to creating more active transportation options for people in the community. Those are my thoughts at this point.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. So I guess, Leavin, my last comment on this would be, 2030 is an interesting milestone in that a statistician told me it's the first time in Canada's history that we will see a declining number of seniors in this country, mostly because the baby boomers will be passing on at a greater rate than new 65-year-olds will be entering the demographic stat. And so we're going to see shifts at the federal, macro, provincial levels that are going to affect us locally in terms of where the focus of federal and provincial dollars are, and where we're going to be able to find viable projects that are supported by different levels of government. And so some of the decisions are entirely, as Councillor Hansen said, in our bailiwick, that the land use decisions, but a lot of the other things that are affecting us are going to be the more macro issues affecting the region as a whole that we just have to be mindful of. But there, you've heard the first round of comments from the council. I don't know what's happened to Councillor Forbes. We'll make sure we can get her feedback in written form then if she's not able to rejoin the meeting. But carry on.
Thank you so much to all of you. And the first thing I would like to do before going on is giving you the space. No, maybe first, Nicole, if you could bring up your note-taking so that you guys also can compare what have you been writing down, listening to the colleagues, but also what have we been hearing also in the backgrounds as a kind of first iteration. So before I jump in to bring some conclusions or some first observations from what I heard you say. But Nicole, if you could share some of the note-taking, that would be very beautiful.
You're anticipating going around in a similar fashion, Leavin?
No, I propose that Nicole has been taking notes.
Oh,
so,
got it. Okay.
And that that we can see Nicole's notes, and then I would like to give you some space also to ask some questions before going to the next. Then I want to structure the conversation. Nicole, is that okay for you?
Ms. Foss?
Nicole will pop up in a couple seconds. She's just finishing this slide.
Thank you so much. Yeah, and this. And thank you for working on the fly while we are having the ease of talking. So, one important observation I can already share while Nicole is coming in is, if you listen carefully, everything is in place. If all of you were part of one human body, all building blocks are in place. The question is, how can you make this one human body that acts as with one nerve system, and also what needs to be refined in order to make crisp, clear decisions, and not only now, but also whenever things happen in the upcoming 9 years or 2 years. How can you make crisp, clear decisions far easier? And that's not an easy one. But there's been puzzle pieces shared that can help tremendously with that. The next exercise is going to be one also to filter that out, to build that up, and to practice that muscle, that collective muscle. But first, it's good to just see the note taking also of you, Nicole, and then go further.
Ms. Atva, do we know how much time Ms. Foth needs?
I'm just going to check in, your worship. This is our kind of live note taking in a virtual format. So otherwise, we probably have a flip chart out in the chambers.
Yeah, I can honestly share from my heart that I did deeply miss and regret we are not physically together. So, well, these screens work in order to conduct the kind of work you need to do right now. It's far more better to be together. But there it is. Oh, this is a long, long list. Thank you so much, Nicole. Yeah. And what I'm going to do is, Nicole, if you could go to, maybe that's a good one. Before we're going to read this through and you can give some more comments to that, I want already to propose the next exercise to you. So I want to jump here because so that you know what will we do with this. So if you could show the next slide, Nicole, of the next question, which is a very, very simple question. What did you hear in your colleagues' aspirations that resonated with you? And it's about resonance is about energy. It's about what, tack. That's what's really grasping. We heard aspirations. You guys were amazing in the time frame in which you can bring it. There was sharpness in it. There was passion in it. But what resonated really with you as a colleague? What we're going to do is I'm going to give you the space not to discuss. And that's quite hard because we are so eager to discuss as human beings. What we're going to do is what is called as a methodology, it's a collaborative capacity exercise. So it's a collaborative capacity circle. What you're going to do is you're going to listen. And it's a pity that, and I really regret we're not physically together. Normally we do the circle around and around a few times, 3 to 4 times. But imagine that we are sitting around in a circle right now. And some of you talked about the inheritance of First Nations. That's where they're still very good at. That's where we ruin our way of communicating. But imagine us being in a circle conversation where each of you can share an observation or a question, and then give the space to the other person to go further into that. So that's the only thing you're going to do. And with that, we're going to build a collaborative image, the common ground on your aspiration, your ambition. So I repeat it, we're going to have a circle 2 to 3 times. And I think it's not going to, when I sense where we are as a group, it's not going to be necessary that I time too much, but each of you can respond with a reflection, to add something to the previous colleague that has been speaking, to strengthen that image of the common ground. So what did you hear in your colleagues' aspirations that really resonated with you? But also having heard your former colleague speaking, building up to that. Not questioning it, not discussing about it, but just building up to that. And now, Nicole, if you could go back to all of the note-taking. So thank you so much for these very rich slides you made. And this is one of the most difficult ones, to not getting bored seeing so many words on one slide, but this is the way we can do it right now. And a flip chart, as you just said, would be much more easy. There's a lot. There's a lot being said, and there's far more on your notes. But as the meal to the table, what's there? Having a greater variety of housing to give options over their lifespan. We have viable options for people to live entirely without a personal vehicle, end of the auto age. For someone to say, I feel welcome in the district. This is my home. For someone to say, the district is a place of opportunity. We changed systems to dismantle oppression and have a just, equitable, decarbonized future. We all have a better understanding of our relationship with the planet. We have great connections with one another and to the planet. We are learning from indigenous leaders, working together and reconciling our history. And we have way more nature in our community. We did the unimaginable, taking climate action before knowing all the answers. We made progress on cycling routes across the district. We made investments in transit and road network. We undertook climate actions. We are proud of our preservation of green space. We're proud of our financial responsibility. We've taken steps towards reconciliation. We have more diversity represented on district council. We have a more inclusive and diverse community. We created zoning to preserve employment lands to create local work opportunities. Greater diversity of housing beyond single-family homes. We welcome new people to the community. The district is known as a welcoming place for businesses, particularly new and small business. I'm proud that we hit the CEIP's greenhouse gas reductions targets. Proud that we created more active transportation options. Yes, if we would make a word cloud of this, there's quite a lot of words resonating as common ones. My question to you is, if you could end up already tonight, and decision making is always about being as crisp as you can already be, by having an agreement on the 5 most important so that all of the others are captured, you did an excellent job and we can save a lot of time. So that's the ambition. But don't avoid the tension in it. So the tension is energy, the tension is the real blossoming, and also without any friction, there's no shining light. But don't avoid it. But what would be these things you have to choose here as a council to move the needle as a collective? So your voice now, it's your art to say, well, if I choose this, I know that I'm fully satisfied. It's a very selfish exercise. And at the same time, I know that all my councillors will be with me. That's the check. So, Nicole, if you could bring up the question again. What did you hear in your colleagues' aspirations that resonated with you? It's not meant to be at the surface. It's meant for you now to say, this is what really resonates with me. And to my feeling, if I'm going to speak this, it's going to resonate with all of my colleagues, of most of them, or it's going to trigger them to help develop it. So the format, each of you speaks his voice. And when you heard this, the next person, the next colleague can just build up on that. And in this way, we're going to have several circles. You're going to have a dialogue circle. I might come in, I might not come in, depending on how we deal with this. But it's really meant to build capacity, to have an image of this common ground where you are and ambition. So if we could go back to the view, to speaker's view. And Mayor Little, it's completely mine right now. So you don't have to be the first one triggering it off, but please feel free to start speaking. We won't be able to avoid, because you're online, that maybe sometimes 2 voices pop in at the same time. But just go ahead. If we see that this is happening too much, I'm going to bring in the little hands, but that's not necessary to start. Mostly this works really well. So whoever feels ready to start bringing in the first building block to say, to my opinion, what really resonated with me most is this. And then we're going to start bringing the rocks together to build a strong fundament. Feel free. We have also about 40 to 45 minutes for this. That's long, but you're going to see the magic what happens once you start doing this for about 15, 20 minutes. Something's going to happen. Be ready. Go.
Well, I'd like to build on something that Councillor Hansen said. And is that a good way to start? And then someone will go off of what I said. Is that the idea then? Okay.
Yeah, perfect.
Councillor Hansen talked about economics and making sure that we have an affordable community into the future. And I think that one of the things that this council at this time can be very proud of is very responsible financial decisions and in terms of asset management. I think that that is going to allow future generations to be able to have barrier-free access to high-quality public resources in our community, because the money's already been set aside for the replacement of those buildings. And so you'll see a continuity of those institutions in the community at an affordable cost at the time you have to make the decision. And so I think that was a very important point Councillor Hanson raised, and that's what I wanted to add to it.
Stephen, can I just jump in here with a question? And maybe it's an observation. I'm noticing here in the discussion that each councillor is bringing kind of a different level of the conversation, and some of us have very specific things, some of us have more general things. Do you have any comment on that? And is kind of everything as it goes right now, or are we looking at kind of the higher level thing, or are we looking at very specific accomplishments, specific actions, or is that something we're looking at later?
Thank you for bringing that in, Councillor Bond. This is attention. So one of my observations, I want to bring it in. One of the things that really resonated with me was your simple sentence of be welcome. Be welcome in the district, or feel welcomed in the district, is a connector for so many things. And that's at a high level. So, but also the things having just raised by Mayor Little is also very important, creating financial conditions to make things happen. These are from a completely different level, but they are intertwined. It means that what you already said, to just put it into practice, okay, this affordability and this financial management needs to contribute to everybody feeling welcomed. And that's what we're going to combine together. So we are now taking notes again, Councillor Bond, so that these things can come together. So it's another approach than doing it from a mental point of view, because we could say, no, we have the vision, and then we have the mission, and then we have some strategic actions, but that's what already happened. That's not what we're going to do right now. What we want to do is bring together the gems and then order them in such a way that they're going to help you make decisions. So don't really worry about it right now. Regarding your observation of there's different layers and there's practicalities, I see it's great because these Zooms, we start to know each other's families. So welcome, little one, I see. Is that correct? So this is our future citizen, 9 years older in 2030. So
well,
does my answer help you, Councillor Bond?
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. And I think one of the things that I'd like to add is a common kind of resonance that I heard through everyone's conversation is the recognition of change, and that change is needed. I heard that, throughout as a common thread, is that there needs to be a change, and each person highlighted that differently. But I think that's something that's
and I was knocking on the door and you didn't.
Oh, I didn't answer the door. Yeah, I'm sorry. I was on the Zoom. Did you want to say hi? No. Okay. But that's the one thing. It's the change, and so that's something that I'd like to add to the conversation.
Thank you for both your observation and also the gem you bring in the middle. Yeah.
Can I chime in? Yes. Okay. So I think people have asked this before, and I actually think that a lot of times we are dealing at the local level with symptoms of systems, right? So it's like we're at the end. And so I always look at things systemically, but practically as well and pragmatically. So we can reach a different outcome, I think, by really addressing some of the symptoms. Otherwise, we're going to keep repeating what the problems that we have. So we can dismantle oppression and fix potholes. Like, we can do both. And I think we have to in this time. So I think that's really important, but I do think change is a great theme. And it's also a level of like transformation versus incrementalism that I think is a point of tension. I know scientifically we need to move really quickly, and I know that change is difficult. And the inertia to maintain the status quo is quite strong. So I think that's an area of tension that we constantly are dealing with. That is, there's no clear way. It's not necessarily even going to be a linear process. Like, I think we're going to meander around to find that, but I would agree with that. And I had another, the love of the environment. I think people in our community feel, humans feel a connection to nature and love nature. I think COVID revealed the amount of outdoors, how much people love being outdoors, but yet our behavior is completely incompatible with a healthy planet. And so I think to reconcile those through communications and through understanding is really, really important, because health is critical. So even if the positive co-benefit of decarbonizing is improved health outcomes. And so I'd love to hear more people comments about health and just how important health, and that's mental health and well-being, is to people, because I think that's one of our goals, is to have healthy, happy, equitable people in our community and around the world.
And thank you for that, Councillor. Corinne, and is there still something that really resonated with one of the colleagues that voiced things that you say, wow, this really resonates with me?
Well, some specific things. When Mike said the end of the auto age, I was like doing a happy dance. Like I was just like so happy. I'm so happy you said that. That's 2021. Okay, good. We're doing it this year. That's it. That's what I heard. And the other, I think Jordan talked about land use in terms of single family zoning. And I think that's an elephant in the room that we don't talk about enough as a community. I think there's some really problematic language in our OCP around single family character and what that means, and really unpacking that and being able to really address, like, what does that mean to people? Because I think that that's really important to really understand. When we have words that we use, they may mean different things to different people. And I think it's really important to define those words, because our OCP also says that every community has people of all ages and incomes and cultures, but then it also has this thing that, you know, that says 60% of our land base is only going to be a certain type of housing. So I think that that's a real point of tension that I would like to talk about.
Yeah. So what I heard, you became very happy with the car that's been abandoned, but also the single family perspective that has been abandoned also. 2 points why Mayor Little brought it. Yeah. Thank you. Who resonates with others elements? Who wants to build?
Mayor Little's like, I didn't say that. I could see his face right now. He's like,
I'll take it anyway. That's fine. I thought more generationally, not in 2021, but there you go.
I'll speak now if you like, Levin.
Go ahead, please.
Yeah, thank you. I was struck at how the concept of diversity wove its way through all of the councillors' comments. Diversity of housing options. I think every councillor touched on that in one way or another, but also diversity of transportation options, diversity of employment options, accommodating a range of people, the idea of the district being welcoming to those who come to the district, and also, of course, welcoming to people like me that don't blame me, I was born here, so welcoming to me as well. So that idea, I think, really did work its way through all of the councillors' comments, and I think that that concept of inclusion and diversity and creating a community that provides for a range of demographics, range of people, incomes, ages, and employment categories. I think that was very clearly stated by the council.
Yeah. Thank you, Councillor Hansen.
Levin? I'll just say I was struck by Councillor Bond's comments. I think it was Matthew that said, you know, the district's known as a community of opportunity, or land of opportunity, and I think that would be something that would be really nice to be known for, in that we there was a shift that happened, and all of a sudden, we have created an environment for people to come here, to live here in a variety of housing, to do business here, because we're doing things differently. There was a shift, and there was, this recognition that you had to do something different, and that shift led to innovation, which we have, in my opinion, not seen enough of in a lot of areas. So I just like that word and that feeling that comes from, this is a community of opportunity, and opportunity for anyone.
Thank you. Yeah. And you are the last one, Councillor Beck, that needs to ask approval from my end. So please go ahead with each other. So it's great doing this. Yeah.
The other
go ahead, Jordan.
Well, I was just going to say the other thing that struck me was Councillor Hansen's comment about learning from our First Nations, I believe, and sorry, I don't have the comments in front of me in my notes. I realize they're not as detailed as they should be, but I think it was around establishing better relationships with our First Nations on across the North Shore, and I think that's something that's important to me as we look to the future, and then we deal with all of these things from housing to transportation to climate. We need to realize the importance of partners. First Nations and the Tsleil-Waututh and Squamish should be partners more than I think they are now in a lot of ways. And then that extends to our other municipal partners across the North Shore as well. So we're working more closely and collaboratively with the City of North Vancouver and the District of West Vancouver. But just the importance of partnerships and working together.
Jordan, that's an even better segue for what I was about to talk about.
Over to you.
So I think in terms of jobs, I'm a small business owner in the municipality, and I completely agree that we need to embrace and support, especially just with economic models that don't work, that are incompatible with small business. But we need to foster an environment that allows small businesses to thrive in our community, and small businesses that are actually supporting the things that we need as a community. So healthy food, localizing our economy. We rely on most of our produce comes from California. That's not going to be sustainable over time. Like, we need to localize our economy, and we can be creating energy projects. Tsleil-Waututh Nation created Metro Vancouver's largest solar energy project. So there's some big scale energy projects that we could do that would be truly transformative. And there's some small scale things we could do, like support community gardens. But I think that small business is really going to be an important decision in terms of land use, size of spaces, and also just being creative and doing things differently. I think that COVID has revealed that lots of jobs are able to work in different ways. I think that's really important. But when I hear from a small baker that just wants to bake beautiful bread for the community, that they can't do it in this community, that everything is hard for them to do that, I think that that's really a sad state of affairs, and that we need to look at the things that actually support our community for the long term, and that would be food and housing, and using our port, the port that we share, in a sustainable way, and everything being regenerative rather than degenerative in the way that we approach the economy. But I get really excited about the best ideas are coming from these innovators and small businesses that sometimes aren't able to bring their ideas to life because of economic challenges. And I think that's really sad. So I also support I don't remember. This is what happens.
I want to just bring something in, because I'm taking notes on these things and starting to weave them. I'll spare you the difficulties, but this is what happens here. And there's an important thing that also Councillor Beck just brought in, is what is really collective amongst all of you. And it's a sidestep, but a fundamental one in order for decision making and action planning. There's such a common sense and energy that you carry on about making the shift happen right now? I would like to also invite you into the conversation. What does that really mean for each of you? So if you could share that also. There's a shift, and you already start sharing that. There's a shift of no cars in 2030. So, and we really want to give you the floor, Mayor Little, to be specific on what you said. But no cars, no single family housing, a place where everybody is welcomed. This is strong. If you now would look to your vision back, this is really an ambition. It's a big, big difference, because with a vision, you're nice. So what you do, you include everything. With an ambition, you become much sharper. And so my invitation for this next round is also to help each other, to understand from each other what change really means for you. And so Mayor Councillor Curran already gave something about, is it either disruptive, or what you use, is it transformative, or is it just incremental, to use your words? But a shift, you want a shift seeing to happen, and that's also when you're going to be proud in 2030. Well, how does this shift look like for you guys now? The shift that you want to create now, how does it look? Is it a big one, a bold one? Is it one that you decide upon and that you slowly want to implement in community? Just explore some ideas, because this is an engine for change and also for decision making in the upcoming workshop, but also now. I give the floor to all of you, councillors and Mayor Little.
I'd probably throw a comment in here. First, I didn't say no cars in 2030. I want to be very clear that I do expect to see a declining number of private vehicles by that point. I do expect to see more of our trips being made by transit, cycling, and walking, and ride sharing to some degree. But I think the end of the age of the automobile is something that's going to take place incrementally. There will be times where there are dramatic shifts, but it's something that's going to take place over a generation. What I'd like to see, what I think can happen in the next 10 years is that, you know, right now, only about 13% of our mode shift is taking place amongst those other alternatives, and I'd like to see that double within that time, you know, which is very aggressive change, since in the last 9 years it's really only shifted by about 2.5%. So it's not a doubling is a significant milestone change. There's going to be different paces for different aspects of it. I think that the decision that council made, Councillor Curran spearheaded it on giving severe, strict limitations on the new housing and how it's going to be built. You're either going to build a house in an extremely efficient envelope way, and then you get to choose your energy source, or you're going to do conventional building, but we're going to dictate a GHG-free source of heating for it. That's going to precipitate a significant shift in housing over time. But I don't see us moving to our multifamily housing spreading everywhere. The multifamily housing needs to be where we have infrastructure in place, and if we're building it ahead of the infrastructure, we're going to end up in some very tricky situations. Already, you know, when I first came to council, when I first came back as mayor, my very first meeting was with the superintendent of the schools, and the superintendent said to me, I have no idea where those 2,500 new people in the bottom of Cap Road are going to be going to school, because the closest elementary school is full, the next closest one can only handle 30, and the next closest one after that is 6 kilometers away on the other side of a highway interchange, and it's not accessible. And so if you are making the changes in land use and throwing population in, but you haven't had the infrastructure built in place to do it, you're going to end up with people driving all over the community to try and get their kids to school, driving all over the community to try and get their kids to daycare. And so they have to happen in concert. And so that's going to be one of the challenges, is that some things are going to happen quickly and some things are going to have to follow behind the infrastructure that supports them. And so I don't see us having significant growth until we can address those other infrastructure pieces in our community. And so that's, everybody here knows that. That's been my view generally, is that you have to let the infrastructure lead the growth rather than having the growth force the infrastructure.
That's a good kickoff. Thank you so much for this one. And I would like to hear not the disagreements, the tensions with that. Yes, but how to build up again from what is the common ambition around it? So how far can you move also the tensions so that it's still together?
I'll jump in here and add a few things. I think I would agree and add on to what Councillor Curran said about transformative change versus incremental change. I think generally incremental change throughout human history, specifically around cities and city building, has built some of the more fine-grained, more resilient types of human habitation that we've seen. And but at this point in time, I think some of the systemic issues require transformative change, specifically in our approach to climate and the environment. And also, I think in the district, in our approach to housing as well. And maybe to add on or have some of the tension around Mayor Little's comment and to build on what Councillor Back and Councillor Curran said around single detached homes and preservation of those neighborhoods. There's likely a lot of existing infrastructure in those neighborhoods, such as schools, roads, all of the physical infrastructure to service residents that could be better used. And instead of trying to put 2,500 people in one small neighborhood and make all the infrastructure catch up with them, I think there's ways for us to look at our existing neighborhoods and make them more functional, make them less car dependent, make them have more opportunities for people who might want to live in an apartment or might only be able to afford to live in an apartment or might want a townhome, might want to be in a clean, friendly, safe, quiet neighborhood, but can't necessarily afford to live in a single detached home. And we have lots of those neighborhoods. And I think that's an incremental change. And I think it's one that, if in 2030, we could say that we had more diverse housing in some of those neighborhoods around some of those infrastructures, like around the schools, around the parks, around the recreation centers that are outside of our town centers. I think that would be something that would be important. And then on the topic of transportation and vehicles, I think linking into what Councillor Curran said about happiness and health, having a safer neighborhood, and whether that's through reducing the speed of vehicles or the number of vehicles as we move towards a more I would say traditional form of transport, using your feet and your own body. I think there's so many great benefits and co-benefits that come out of that. One of I think anyone with kids probably realizes one of the most unnerving or alert parts of your day when you're with your children is when you're walking. You're walking on the road and you're walking, to school or walking around the neighborhood because of the concern and the fear of motor vehicles and what might happen should your kid just wander, just like a kid should do. And so I think there's a lot of mental health benefits. There's a lot of physical health benefits for having a safer neighborhood where kids can play more freely and we don't have that ongoing concern about traffic safety as we do right now in a lot of our neighborhoods. That's those are maybe two or three things to add on to the conversation.
Okay. Did I go again? Jim, do you want to go?
I'm just going to weigh in specifically on the issue of population growth, which is something that we've discussed and I think has been a tension. And I regretted trying to make light of the fact that I was born in the district because I think I was trying to make a more serious point, which is that we need to find a way of understanding growth that works for everybody, that works for people who come and feel welcome, but also those of us who are here legitimately don't want to have our way of life, why would we, undermined by population growth that isn't met with, and this was Mayor Little's point, that isn't met with appropriate investments in transportation and other amenities to support the population. So I think when we look forward 9 years, we have to be, our thinking, I don't think, is so much how to create growth for growth's sake, and it really isn't something that I would ever support. But what we do need to do is consider how to flesh out our community in terms of housing options, transportation options, and other amenities, so that the population that's already here and the population that will be generally coming is appropriately accommodated by these amenities and transportation options. And it occurred to me when I thought about change, wouldn't a nice change be that there's no more homeless people in the district? And I put it forward perhaps as an exemplar of what I'm talking about. We don't need more, not necessarily more population in the district, but we do need to look after the people that are here better. And that includes housing options, transportation options, and other amenities and supports. So that I just wanted to weigh in terms of my perspective on population growth.
I would add to some of the comments that have been made just about, we all have talked about wanting more diversity and inclusivity in our community, but I think a lot of that comes from engagement, like who is involved in making decisions and how are they involved, and that's something that I hear from all levels of government everywhere, is that the people who are sometimes most impacted and oftentimes negatively impacted by decisions that are made aren't included in the decision-making process. So I think that that's really important, to have more inclusion in the actual process itself, and that's something we have talked about. And then, yeah, I mean, there have been things that I thought intuitively, and then data said that that actually wasn't true. And so I think the transportation piece is really tricky, because in a region where you're trying, we are part of not just the North Shore, but part of this region, which is also part of the planet. I always like to remind everyone. But it is challenging to fight for dollars to get infrastructure when you have low density places that are not going to be at the top of the list. So there are some decisions, I think, that have to be made doing that, which won't ever be easy. But I also think looking at every bit of space in terms of what can we do with the existing space, and this is kind of building on what Councillor Bond was saying, to make it so that you can cut down on the amount of times you need to leave. Like, what do you need to be there? You need daycare, you need food, you need, all of the things. Like, I am really fortunate to live in a community that has a pharmacy and a grocery, a small market and a doctor's office and a dentist's office. And when you have those, now I think we've gone from 15-minute communities to 5-minute communities, I'm hearing now. But if you have things, how do we look at land? Because even if we just did what was envisioned in the OCP that we're now looking at, I think enhancing for the 21st century, and with the reality of science that we need to align policies with, things would look different. Like, we wouldn't leave big swaths of land completely car dependent anymore. We would try to say, how can we minimize how can we make cycling safer? How can we prioritize people rather than cars? Because I think if you look at urban design over the last long period of time, like, it was built for cars, and we need to build it for people. And that hasn't been the priority. It's been, and I think that it's hard for people to envision a different way of living because there's resistance to change. But I think everyone can enjoy time spent outside, quiet, not feeling like they're going to get hit by a car. And so a lot of these changes that we can make will actually be healthier and happier, lead to healthier and happier communities, but they won't be easy to do. And I think we have to acknowledge that.
Thank you so much, Councillor Curran. I want to bring in one brief learning stop here. And also, thank you, Councillor Bond, what you've been saying is with doing this exercise as I presented, so I take my full responsibility to give everything a space from vision to practicality. You also sense that some tensions kick in the conversation. This is not about the people only, it's about what is happening then. What do you observe in the last 15 minutes of this conversation? How do you feel about the conversation from the last half an hour, and how do things shift for you? And where do you feel, wow, in the conversation, this is now giving me energy, and this is quite hard for me. And why I ask it to you, if your citizens would listen now, what would give them energy from this conversation? What would take them out of the conversation? And it's a check. It's a learning question for all of us.
Okay, I'll speak on behalf of people that I hear from a lot. They would.
I mean, from this conversation now.
No, I'm thinking of like
30 minutes. Yeah.
So you're saying, what would people say about what we just said?
Yeah, not only, but my first question is really very close to yourself. If you now look to these 30, 45 minutes that we've been speaking, this is an intense conversation, and we give the space to everything to share what's really resonating. Where do you feel that, wow, this is giving me energy, or wow, oof, this is disconnecting me? That's the question. So maybe not going too much to the citizens, but to yourselves, to the 5 of you in this room.
Well, I feel like what stresses me out is that people don't understand the scale and scope and speed that we need to move to leave a future and to address the inequities that are happening now. So I feel like that sense of urgency and fire and emergency, we declared a climate and ecological emergency. And so I feel like that is not there. And so the sense of urgency is never there for me. So that's one sense of tension, if I'm understanding this.
Yeah, is it not present here in this conversation?
Well, I would say typically I feel like there's support, but I oftentimes feel like alone. That's not fair to say. I don't feel alone. I just don't always feel like the sense of urgency is there. And I feel like other people who feel that sense of urgency also feel alone. We feel alone together. But I do believe that my council has been supportive of what I've brought forward, and I'm grateful for that. But I think generally there's just broadly not an understanding of how much work we have to do. And then I would say that I'm encouraged by what makes me feel good is that I do think we recognize that we have to change. I think there is a recognition of that, but still tension about what that looks like in practice, and how engaged our community will be with us along this journey, because we all have to do this together.
Thank you.
Councillor Vaughn, go for it.
I think one of the things that I just came up for me in the past bit of the conversation is maybe it's a little bit on what Councillor Kern said about agreeing on the need to change. And I think that's something, even when we look back at the official community plan and the start of this process, everyone on council agreed this is a good plan and this is a good document. And I think there is a lot of common ideas and a lot of commonality on what our future community would look like and what we would want to see in our future community, and who we're going to care for, and how we're going to look after our current residents and future residents. The one challenge in this is something that has been a challenge, at least for all of my time on council, is that it's often that individual councillors have completely different and sometimes quite opposite ideas on what actions will actually get us to that vision. And I think that's a tension that's come up for me during this conversation. And I also think thinking about who who any actions or who what vision is for, and how different groups of people might be prioritized in an action plan. I think that's probably another tension, and I think that's been an ongoing tension. I think, at least, that I've noticed during my time on council is agree on the big picture, but how to get there frequently completely opposite, and like an opposite understanding of what the benefits or the impacts of any decision are. So that's a tension that that's come up in the past bit for me.
Thank you so much. Yeah.
I think the way you phrased your question, Laban, was, what would bring the community energy to hear in this conversation, and what would take away from that energy? And I guess what I've always got rattling around in my head right now is that the community's quite right now is so focused on COVID and what's happening in the next 2 months and 3 months and 6 months that it's very hard to have the long-term discussion. Yeah, there are going to be elements of the community, 2, 3, 4% of the community that is always extremely long-range looking, and they will always be able to shift into that gear. But when I'm talking to the people in the community, their concerns are, a couple of businesses shut down in our area that were service providers, and they're seeing really difficult times. And people are their daughter lost work, their son is having to do job retraining. They're very, very focused on the short term right now out of necessity. And so I think it's very hard to have some of the discussions we're having. We obviously delayed the process of the OCP review because we recognized that last year. We've had to return to it now as trying to make the best of the situation. But I still think, what I've got in my mind right now is that there's not a single member of the public signed up to speak at tonight's workshop. And it is a public meeting. And so we're having a very difficult time with connecting with where the bulk of the community is at this time. And I think that the biggest piece is because they're focused on 2 months, 3 months, 6 months, and very serious family decisions that they have to face because of economics, because of staying home, confusion, health orders are causing people to feel isolated and depressed, and they're not wanting to necessarily come out and engage in a public forum or get out of their comfort zone. And so whenever I hear discussions about radical change to come up with new climate standards, or significant discussions about reconciliation and Indigenous affairs, and significant discussions about all of the many things that we're carrying on as a council because we recognize that they're all important in our community. When you go and you talk to the average member of the public right now, they're not having those conversations. They're not. They're talking about the traffic that they get stuck in. They're talking about how the school is having challenges managing COVID, or and their kids don't know whether they can hang out with this kid but not with that kid. And because of COVID cohort restrictions and other types of things. So there is a disconnect. And I'm saying we still need to have the broader long-term discussion about the things that have been identified in our community as shortcomings. But it's very difficult to say that our community is on the same page with us at this time.
I guess if I could.
I'll wait. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Councillor.
Oh. Go ahead, I've lost my mic here. Oh, can you hear me? I just can't hear you. Go ahead.
We can hear you, Councillor Beck.
But he cannot hear us. Councillor, maybe.
Thank you. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yeah.
To take that time sorting out a mic. I just would express my concern for how we have this conversation with the community. I think the current OCP was supported by a great amount of the community, and many years of work went into putting it together. And now we're going through the whole review process, which is going to result in some some meaningful changes that, as Councillor Curran has said, will bring it into the 21st century, and I think will be positive for sure. But I think we may still risk having the same difficult conversations with the community that we had during the last election. And so for me, it's about how we really just change the narrative or change the way we have the conversation around our OCP. Because if it's a plan that we believe in, then we have to go out there and communicate it in a way that lets people know that it is a solid plan. It's still a solid plan, and we're doing what's going to take us in the right direction going into the future. So I guess, yeah, my concern is just kind of how we have those conversations with the community. I'll try and fix my speaker.
Good luck. Councillor Hansen.
Yeah, thank you very much, Levin, and thank you for your question about what brings us energy and what bogs us down. I mean, as a person who sat on this council since 2014, I thought that was a very good question, and it's certainly true. Some of the discussion empowers you, makes you feel strong, and that we're going to accomplish something. And from time to time, I confess, sitting on council, one does feel weighed down. Focusing just on the positive side, what's given me energy in this conversation is the reminder that there is a lot of agreement. And I'm sensitive, Councillor Bond, to your statement that our disagreement is as to how to get there. But even stepping over that concern, and I speak to Councillor Bond on this, but I speak to all the other councillors, there is an awful lot of agreement on the fundamental issues of housing, transportation, employment, land, social issues, inclusion, reconciliation. There is an awful lot of agreement. We, for the most part, all of us are pushing in the same direction. And what gives me energy is the knowledge that we can assemble a plan that will achieve tangible action steps in the direction of a shared vision. So thank you for that question.
Can I bring some good news and some bad news? I don't even ask permission, so I'm going to do that anyhow. So it's also linked to your last words, Councillor Hansen. I think the good news is you are a perfect group to withstand storms. Really, I start realizing when Mayor Little started to speak is you are navigating a storm while even having the time now to review an OCP long term. That's incredible and that's amazing. I'm conducting quite a lot of councils, but the way we have this conversation in these times is really impressive. So I really want to honor that. What I also see is it's becoming quite simple for you. The decision-making framework could be simple. All of you are in for a shift. Well, a shift is not about what you see as a shift, but what other people will see as a shift. So, and a shift is not about what changed all of a sudden now. That's not. That's what decision did you make that made the shift obvious. So, and the topics. It's also what you just say, Councillor Beck. The topics are obvious. So if you're not acting upon the 4 most important topics, you're not creditworthy for the community. Full stop. So there's a lot of simplicity there. The bad news is that I think you've been imprisoned for quite a while, and that's an assumption. But I really would like to bring it forward, and there's trust from my side in you as a group in what disagreement means. Disagreement on stuff and on actions and on topics does not mean that you cannot move forward. Disagreement does not mean that you cannot act as a leadership team together. In fact, disagreement means power in a leadership team. The question, how do you create a space for disagreement while acting bold at the same time? And it's as if also in the conversation that, and Mayor Curran, I really want to value the way you bring in urgency and urgency.
Do y'all hear that?
Yes, but there's a tricky part in it. The tricky part is that it's so massively important for you and also for the earth. You mentioned that you put so much pressure on a system that needs space for change. That there's no space for change in between, while everybody needs to hear what you say. And I'm not speaking on behalf of what I saw happening around this table. I really feel, and that's the compliment I really want to give, the good news, there's tremendous respect for all of you, to all of you. That's remarkable. And I really want to please see that. So that's the best basis to make right decisions. I think you have a twofold challenge. I think you cannot afford, if you really want to be the creditworthy, it is, you know, living in this place of the world, and for me the shift is not so long ago, but a big massive shift that happened for me is that this environment makes me make much more time to reflect. And one of the wise quotes that I was reading, I think yesterday, is, you are never remembered as a person for the things you do. You're never remembered for the things you said. You're always remembered for the way you made people feel. And that's also what I sense here. You guys are ready for that game. And Councillor Mack, you said it beautifully. What is the new narrative? Councillor Bonds, you gave the first ingredients to that new narrative. How can everybody feel welcomed in our district? That was the first puzzle piece that came around. How to weave these building blocks around that. And Councillor Curran, if you could remain the driving engine for this urgency, that's going to help putting the right pressure on the cooker. And at the same time, how could we land things that are feasible now with that perspective in mind? And so the framework also for, I think for next week and also for the homework in between is, I think you're obliged to yourself, and that's the bad news. You have to come up with 4 disruptive actions that cover each of the 4 building blocks of the needs in your community. If you don't do that, you're not trustworthy for yourselves to this shift you want to make. And disruptive or transformative is needed in the whole story. So you owe yourselves as a council to make at least 4 transformative choices. That's the consequence of your words in the dialogue tonight. And so I'm quite blunt and straightforward, but it's also helping you look to the right perspective. And you're also obliged to yourself to write that new narrative of your ambition now after COVID. It's linked to the current, to the reality. And as you said beautifully, Mayor Little, it makes no sense whatsoever now to talk to citizens and individuals and families about 2030. It really makes no sense. But you cannot afford yourselves not to prepare it right now. You need to be ready to accomplish that milestone of 2030 without even speaking about it, but making your people feeling they belong to this community now. So that's the second piece that you guys have been phrased. The third piece is the bridge between this. That what are these actions that are going to lead, that are going to support these bold disruptive actions or transformative actions and decisions, and they're going to make the people feel they belong. It's inclusive to this community. And these are the actions that we're going to also, that's the invitation also for the next step in between today and next week. That's where I would like to invite you in also to think about these 3 things. You have a common narrative. Hey, that's the big celebration. There's really a common narrative. There's a common sense for shift. How will you make that shift happen? With the 4 bold actions you agree upon. Not the ones you don't agree upon. The 4 bold actions you agree upon as council, because that's the ones you have in your hands. The rest is going to build bridge building between these 2 things. And that's the positive story. The difficulty, the challenge is how to then weave this is to stay strong as one council to bring that message over and over and over again. That's going to be the challenge, but also the invitation for the upcoming months. But it's beautiful. What I wanted to summarize this, because that's the beauty of this conversation. And this does not mean that there's no space for disagreement. There's always going to be, and I hope, an incredible space for disagreement between your sense of urgency, Councillor Curran, and the other ones. But as long as you hear each other and you can bridge this, you're in the right tension for the community, because some people in the community, and your language is also mine, but I've learned that only 5% understand it. 95% want to follow. They don't want to be the leaders in that or the upfront runners. How to build that on behalf of your community with the 5 and the 7 of you. We missed 2 colleagues. how to build that collaborative capacity. So that's a long, sorry, I didn't plan to talk so long now, but invitation for the upcoming week, and there's a whole system built, and I want to give you the floor also, is after I've heard some reflections from your guys, reflect about the big, bold action you want to make. And I had a conversation this morning, I was in a conference with Copenhagen. Well, 2030 is not even the date that they want to be, okay, the first step is having fossil fuel cars out of the city, but 2030 will really be a city without cars. So there's places in the world choosing for that. 2025, that's 4 years from now, Norway as a whole country is out of fossil fuel cars. To just mention some of these things. So China is just now approving its plan to go completely renewable by 2027. So they push their timeline by 3 years. So I just want to bring in, and that's no big talk, but what are the disruptive ones? And it's so beautiful, it's transportation, but it's also, what is the most beautiful form of living and housing in the future that could happen in your environment? So it's all about beauty. And Aristocrates has that beautiful sense, beauty is materialized love. And so it's also, you live in a region of love. It's your duty to materialize that beauty and that love into all of the aspects of the infrastructure you build. And up for a next conversation next week, where we can sharpen the stones and also polish the stones in order to actions. And how are we going to do that? That's what Nicole is going to present to you. But no, first I'm going to do one little piece in between, but I would like to hear 1 or 2 sentences from each of you, reflecting on what I just shared with you guys. So 1, 2 sentences, not too long, but just want to test the waters, hear where you are energy-wise regarding my reflections.
For next week or right now?
Just now.
And I did want to be clear about that, because I heard you say come up with a disruptive action for each of the 4 study areas, or 4 for each?
Your choice.
I'm gonna know what my homework commitment is here. Yeah, I have a difficult time trying to move into the emotive, where you try to take a policy discussion and decision and move it into beauty and love, as you've so eloquently put it, Levin. But I do think that when we are thinking about future generations, where we're thinking about making decisions today that don't erode the abilities of future generations to make decisions, that is an expression of love and concern for future generations. And so that's the best way I can put it right now, is that that the natural expression of that is being concerned about the future for other people, and not just being concerned about where we're at today. So those would be my quick comments on the matter.
Yeah. I'll weigh in, Levin. I mean, what really I appreciated you saying so much, and that I would really seek all of us to keep in mind, is that a disagreement between us, there will always be disagreements. I mean, any 2 people are going to have disagreements. And certainly any 7 intelligent, engaged people like we are on this council, who love our community as much as we do, we are going to have disagreements. But I respect so much you're reminding us that those disagreements don't have to be an impediment to construction forward action by this council. And that's an idea that I'm going to carry forward and keep close to me, because I believe that's an idea we all have to remember. We can get bogged down in disagreements. It's valuable to express different points of view, but ultimately there's an awful lot we can set aside for the good of our community to make progress.
I feel like it's a game show where you're like, whose microphone is gonna turn off? One question, because will comment on this, but I think that this is so important that staff also has this opportunity, because I feel like we have, I've met some incredible folks in our staff that I think have these really transformative ideas, but feel like they don't have the politicians, if you will, to support those ideas, because it is a system. We have to work together. And so, I mean, that's not the question, but it is a concern or a flag. And I wondered if we could speak to like what staff, because like I would like to hear them, if you weren't worried about how the vote was going to go or whatever, what would you do? You know, what would you do based on love? Because that's the word that everyone, I thought it was nice, Mike, you were like, this is gonna make people uncomfortable, but it's like love. That's why we do it. That's why we do what we do. I hope we fight for a different world out because of love. So yeah, I would like to, I think the staff piece is really important, because I think that's been so critical in my learning. And I want to reflect on that. Jordan or Matthew?
Sorry, I just saw Dave's camera come on. I didn't know if you want to make a comment, Mr. Stewart, or like you're on mute.
I think it's your turn, Councillor Beck or Councillor Bonds.
I'm afraid,
I don't hear you.
Mr. Stewart, your microphone was unmuted and was still not working, so you might be having a technical connection issue. So, still can't hear you. Okay, still can't. I don't know if you want to try and restart, and we'll go to someone else in the interim time. Councillor Back, were you completed with your comments?
No, well, I don't have too much to add, just to say that I appreciated tonight's exercise. It resonated to me as well that, you know, we do have love for this community that we all have in common, obviously, and we are going to have different points of view and disagreements. It's unfortunate a couple of our colleagues weren't here tonight. I think that may have, you know, contributed a lot to the conversation as well, just in terms of how we look at these issues. But no, I'm looking forward to coming up with those 4 transformative actions and looking forward to next week.
Thank you. Other members of council? Councillor Bond?
Yeah, I'll add one thing, and I think it's similar to Councillor Hansen's comment about disagreement and taking action. And I think, you know, from what you said, Lieve, and we do share a lot of the same desired outcomes, and I think it is important to, you know, weave that way and that path together in order to achieve them. And I think one thing that came up for me during the last part of the discussion is also having some recognition that not everything is within our control, and that, you know, even if we do take actions and we do have a plan and we are acting in a common direction, we still might not get the desired outcome that we look for, because, you know, there's those other forces, those other things, but that's not an argument for not taking action, because when we do take action, those actions will move us towards our desired future, even though those other forces might have pulled us farther back or in a different direction. So I think a common commitment to action and to taking actions is probably something that can come out of this workshop that would definitely make me feel like we're making progress.
Thank you so much for your answers, because it's weaving things together, and also the goal of tonight was strengthening that muscle and having the common view. And so there's some little presents we want to give to you. And so a first one is, Nicole, if you could bring up the sheet, is also the word cloud. So we made a word cloud of all of the conversation now from the last 45 minutes, almost an hour. So we're gonna delay a little bit. I think we're gonna need some 5 to 10 minutes more. So my apologies for that. So this is making all of your words viable. It's so beautiful. And what we're going to do is send this to you. This is what has been said. And our invitation is, with this slide also, is that from here, you're going to use this also to make decisions. So what you're going to receive, and Nicole, I'm going to hand over the mic also to Nicole in a second, is we want you to use this as the backbone also to consider decision making. And so Nicole, next slide. Nicole, I don't see the next slides. Oops. Yeah. There's some questions, and I brought some new elements in, so my apologies that we're not prepared. So that's the big bold actions also, and the bridge, and the narrative. Questions to ponder when considering an action, and what you're going to receive in the upcoming 24 hours will be a survey for yourself. So in order for all of the actions that you're going to ponder on between now and next week, is this a fit with the OCP vision? Is these actions that you have to choose from now, is this a real fit with the OCP vision? A second one is, does this address several of the 4 key topic areas? When you now go into these bold actions, could also be that one bold action regarding your reflection, also Mayor Little, it could be that we have one action that is much more powerful than 4 separate ones. It would even be much better. Does it move us towards the OCP vision quickly, orientamentally and currently? Is it bold enough or not? We've been speaking about that. A very important one, how is this a no regrets action? You will never regret taking this action because it's only beneficial. And does it address both the short-term needs and the long-term needs? Also, considering the reflections of Mayor Little, the community is in a short-term bubble right now. But how does all of the actions you take address their short-term needs and their long-term needs at the same time? Other things to ponder on is, okay, what's the effect of the decision-making you're going to do? Who benefits from this action? And as Councillor Bond also said, it's not easy, or Councillor Brock, you're still sometimes in disagreement of not full clarity for whom are you doing this, but who benefits from your actions? Does it impact equity, priority, residents positively or negatively? And a very important one, how much support is it for these actions in the community? And it doesn't mean if the community doesn't support it yet that you don't have to take them. But if you take them and community is in favor of it, it's going to be much easier to implement. And the last very important one, completely linked to the last sentence of Councillor Bond, do you have control over implementing these actions? You don't have control over everything. So what does that mean also for your decision making? And my part has been done for today. I could only be here due to all of the work of staff. I really want to stress that out. There's so much support that I received from staff, but I see staff supporting you in so much. So I also want to thank you so much for that, so that I could speak also on behalf of that team that has been conducting this, and not only for myself. And Nicole, as the orchestra, the conductor of the little orchestra, I would like to hand over the mic to you, symbolically speaking also, so that you can take us into the homework that is now expected also from all the councillors towards next week gathering.
Ms. Both, welcome.
Thank you, Levin, and thank you, Mayor Little. As you've seen, there's been many potential actions generated over the course of the OCP review to now, as we've seen since the beginning of March last year with the presentation of the white papers, and which has come from 4 key topic areas that Council picked as the most important areas that we talk about. We've also seen actions come through the community in engagement that has taken place so far, right up to the Council's input at the workshops in the last 2 weeks. From all those sources, we've heard about actions covering many different themes that span the 4 topic areas. Examples you'll recognize, such as completing walking and cycling routes, incentivizing social and supportive housing, and integrating a climate equity lens. We pulled all of these ideas together in a list of 37 potential actions. And I just want to recognize that there might be one or two actions that we heard from council after last week's workshop that might not be reflected yet, but we have those noted and we'll bring them back at the February 23rd workshop. So now, as Levin said, we'd like to hear from you and turn it over to you about the importance of these potential actions, bringing in the discussion that Levin led this evening. So very soon, Tina will be sending a link to an online feedback form just for council. And on there, to help indicate some actions that will shift the dial, as Levin was talking about, some of them ones that would shift them ones towards the OCP vision more are indicated as big impact actions, and then there's also supporting actions. So when you open the link, some of the questions on there, how important is an action to you? So for example, completing walking and cycling connections, you click a box to indicate expedite now, it's very important and urgent. Advance or continue, important. Evaluate further, possibly important. Or consider in the future, less important. We also want to hear if we missed any potential actions reflecting the discussion today, or things that you mull about tonight or tomorrow that come up. And lastly, we want to know what floats to the top for you. What are your top 5? Levin was saying 4, so we've given you one bonus one. Top 5 highest priority actions. These could be the transformational actions that Levin talked about, ones from the list, or if there's other actions that you have in mind that aren't on that list, there is an open-ended box in there for you to add some others. If you come across an action in the feedback form that you feel you want a little more depth on it, there will also be a companion document in the email coming from Tina, and that provides a little bit more information on each action. It's not necessary to use it or read through the whole thing to complete the feedback form, but it's there as a supporting tool just to offer to council should you like it or wish to have it. The feedback form should take about, we're estimating 10 to 30 minutes to complete, depending on how much time you want to spend on it. So right now, after the workshop, you might wish to complete it while the workshop discussion is fresh in your minds. Or if not, we're kindly requesting to complete it by end of day tomorrow, Wednesday, right up to midnight. That's totally fine. And this is so we can pull the feedback together in time for the workshop next Tuesday and be able to present that, the results, the summary of the results together at the next workshop, which is on the 23rd, Tuesday, with Levin. Levin again will be leading the workshop. He'll be diving into the results from the feedback form and leading the discussion towards prioritizing a list of actions. After the workshop series, there will be public engagement in the spring that we will further use to inform the action plan. And with that, I wanted to take this opportunity to thank you for participating in such a fruitful discussion this evening, and to Levin for leading the discussion. And we look forward very much to continuing the workshop series next week. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Both. Mr. Milburn, did you have a comment?
I just wanted to note if councillors had any questions just for Nicole right now, just about what the homework assignment is and what you'll be receiving. Happy to answer those now, or of course, when you receive it, if any questions pop to mind, staff are available to answer those questions right away. Thank you. And I hope everyone's enjoyed tonight. I certainly did. I personally felt it was just a fantastic conversation. I really want to thank council members for contributing so thoughtfully tonight. Thank you.
Yeah, the only question or concern I would express is about the tight timeline. Not just for my own sake, but we have 2 councillors who are not with us. And I think it would be, in order for the next session to work, which I hope we have full attendance at, I think that we probably need to show some grace on that timeline and support those counselors to participate in the process, because if they're not engaged before we get to the next section, the next session may not be as fruitful. And so with grace.
And we'll be reaching out to them as well. Thank you.
Any other questions from counselors over your homework for the next week? Councillor Bond.
One question, and it was just something that came up during the homework assignment, but we'll be at the next workshop. The one challenge I find with surveys where you kind of check a box based on importance is you also need a way to prioritize things. And I think, Levin, you talked about that a little bit, about actions that kind of hit all four of the topic areas, actions that are going to move us quicker, actions that are going to be no regret actions. Is that where we're going to start to apply that lens to actions that we have said that are important versus not important?
That's a question you raise, huh? Councillor Bond, do you want an answer now also?
No, I don't think I need an answer right now, but just that we will be kind of, when we look at prioritization, we're going to be not just based on which ones we say most are important, but there needs to be another framework as well.
Well, the only reflection I would like to give back, there's two ways of doing this. And the way we approach it also tonight is, you heard the wisdom of your colleagues and yourselves, and it's also about a deep gut feeling. You all know very well what should happen and what could happen. And that's the approach now. And that's a little bit contradictory to the ticking the boxes, that's true. But the ticking the boxes is a means to an end. It's a means to have, again, a very fruitful conversation next week, so that we can really end, hopefully, with some decisions together. That we see, oh, well, we're in alignment of this, and we're not in alignment yet with these things. So it's a means to an end. And that's why we also try to narrow it down as much as we could, to do the whole statistics and also the feasibility and the feasibility study and the timeline. That's the work we can still conduct afterwards. And then we're going to bring in reality, budgets, timing, feasibility, all of these things, impact. We want to do that after the conversation of last week, but these are two, so that's a choice that has been made by the whole team. But it's both are important, but the choice now is really to make the choice from this leadership conversation. This was really a very powerful leadership conversation. Take this knowledge and wisdom in order to fill out the survey, and it's just a means to help you order your thoughts. So, but you're absolutely right. In the next stage, you're gonna have to budget these things. You're gonna have to plan these things. You're gonna have to bring them in a timeline. But that's what's also is going to be a big responsibility together with staff to also take the time to do that properly. Does that help?
Yeah, no, that's great. And the other question I have, I guess, for staff is the, and I might see it when we get the survey after the meeting, but are the actions that were proposed as part of the original white papers? There was a long list of potential actions in the original white papers from last year. Are they included specifically, or are the actions that were going to be in the survey more a generalization of those things based on the discussion that we've had during these past few workshops?
Maybe if Nicole can just comment on how we condensed it down to the smaller number.
Yes, through your worship, we had a number of actions that came up, as Councillor Bond said, through the white papers, through the COVID supplements, what we heard from council feedback at the previous workshops in February. And so, and also at the stakeholder workshops that were held, particularly last year in March. So a number of those actions are very similar, and so they're rolled up into these 37 actions, and so that's where they've all come from. And in the companion document that Tina will be sending, under each action there, we have a little bit more information of, what could this action look like, some more details, and it also says the sources on there too. So whether the action came from the white paper, it was talked about at the stakeholder workshop, or several sources at once.
And your worship, so if councillors find that we've generalized too much in any way, that's where that opportunity is to add a particular action, to bring out that nuance, to highlight something that maybe isn't there. We want to make sure we capture those two through the process. So don't feel limited by that either.
Great. Thanks. Thank you for those questions. And I wanted to thank all staff, Ms. Foth, Ms. Atva, Mr. Milburn, and Levin. This has been a really useful conversation. So I think we're definitely moving forward here.
It might be a good time just to check back in with Mr. Stewart. Did you get your connection issues sorted out? We look forward to your comments next week. Okay. All right. Any other closing comments? I guess, Levin, the floor is yours.
I don't want to take it. I want to thank you. Really, I want to thank you. And I would like to give the last word to you, Mayor Little. So,
yeah, well, I want to thank all members of staff and our consultant for helping get us to this point. It does help us progress along the decision-making process in order to be able to have an up-to-date and informed plan going forward. I look forward to the action plan that's going to result from all of this work. And I just want to thank everyone for their additional time. We do have a few more of these workshops planned, and we have some extra space and time built in case we carry on with our action planning discussions. But tonight was one of the nights where we didn't have anything pressuring us necessarily to end early. So I hope everybody felt that they had an opportunity to share their views. But on behalf of the council, thank you to Levin, and wish everybody a fantastic evening.
Thank you, everyone. Thanks, Levin.
Thank you.
bye.
Have a great night.
Thanks.
Thanks, everyone.
I'll accept adjournment.
So moved.
Moved by Councillor Hanson, accepted. Thank you all so much.